Hello, welcome back. This is part 3, chapter 1, page 9 in your notes. We're talking about rounding. If you do this at home, just remember, use the pause button as necessary that you need to get the notes down, and then you come in and bring your questions and get a lot of work done in class that way. It's more productive for you. Page 9, we're talking about rounding. Rounding 47 to the nearest 10. I gave you a number line there. I'm going to go ahead and label the 47 right there. And I notice that 47 is closer to the 50 than it is the 40. So simply put, 47 rounds to 50, rounded up. All right, the next one, here's another example at the bottom of page 9. It says round 42 to the nearest 10. Well, notice 42 is closer to 40 in this case. So if you forgot how to do this or you don't remember the steps and that rounds to 40, when you're asked to round, in this case, I'm asked to round to the nearest 10. So the first thing I want to do is notice, well, what number is in the tens place? Well, that number is right there. So you identify that, look to its right. If this number is less than 5, it goes down. If the number is greater than 5, it would go up like the previous problem did. And then we'll show you what happens when that number actually is 5 on this slide right here on page 10 in your notes. 45, if that number is a 5, we round it up. So again, this is the tens. Now that's what I'm asked to round to, okay? So whatever I'm asked to round to, I identify that place. Then look to the right, it's 5. If that's 5 or higher, the number goes up. So that the nearest 10 of 45 would be 50. All right, so if you want the steps, if that's helpful for you, at the bottom of page 10 in your notes, it says to round to a certain place. Here are the things. The first thing you do is you identify the place that you're rounding to. Once you do that, look at the digit to its right. If that digit to the right is 5 or greater, round it up. The digit to the right is less than 5, you round it down. Look at the previous slides for examples of that. If necessary, change the digits to the right all to zeros, and you'll see that here in just a second. So I gave you a list of numbers. 137, that rounds to 140 because the 3 is in the tens, 7 is greater than 5, so it rounds up. 473 rounds to 470. 7 is in the tens, the number to its right is less than 5. The next one rounds up to 240 because of the 5. The 5 rounds the 3 up. That rounds up to 290 because the 5 rounds the 8 up to 290. And then if you're asked to round to the nearest 1,000, well, let's look at what happens there. Okay, here's some examples for you. This will be a good place to try pausing the video if you were at home. Pausing it and see if you can round them correctly. Apparently my wife is printing something off the printer and I'm going to keep going anyway. Round to the nearest 1,000. So we identify the 1,000 places right there. I look to its right. That number is greater than 5. Okay? So since that's greater than 5, that means that this digit rounds up to 8. And all the rest become zeros. There's 8,000 right there. If I did the second one, I look at the 8, I look to the right, the 4 is less than 5, it's 8,000 also. I'm going to look at the next one, 19,343 becomes 19,000 because of that 3. And then the very last one on this page, 68,500, that 8 I look to the right, 5 is 5, it rounds up, that rounds up to 69,000. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Well, let's take a look at an example of how rounding is used in real life. So you see this guy, what are we on now? Page 12 for you. You see this guy trying to round this stuff in his head. And one way that we could use this in real life, let's say we had that list of numbers and we're trying to add it quickly. Well, what you might do is round it off to the nearest 10 first and then add it. This is just a little real life application for us. So if I rounded those to the nearest 10, I'd have these values here, which you see printed in your notes. So then, on the next slide on page 13, well, hit the pause button, take a minute, add those up, see what you get. And if you did that, you should come up with about 200. Again, it's just a way to estimate values. If you have to add several digits in your head quickly, that's one trick to use there. Let's move on to the bottom of page 13 and look at inequality symbols. A, arrow to the left, B, means A is less than B. And if you have this symbol, this is the one that means A is greater than. What some people like to say, the old saying is the alligator eats more. So whatever happens, basically, if you imagine teeth on an alligator, they eat the bigger number. There's the alligator's teeth. Forgive my poor drawing. Here we go. 8, 12. 8 is less than 12, so that symbol goes that way. The 12 gets eaten. And if you go ahead, take a minute and review this information, you'll need to be able to identify, classify numbers, compare them using the less than, greater than, or equal to sign. And that wraps up page 13 for you. And then we move into section 1.7, solving equations. All right, let's get a little vocabulary out of the way here. The first one is variable. We're going to be talking about this all year long together. Variable is a letter that represents a number. Okay, it just means any number that we might have. The variable can be anything. Okay, and then sometimes we're going to try to find out what it is. The solution, that's what is the value of the variable that makes that equation true. And that's most of the time what we're trying to find, the solution to a variable. In other words, what value makes it true. For example, if I have x plus 5, the x in that equation, that's the variable. It's the bottom of page 15 in your notes. And then on page 16, x equals 2, the 2, that's the solution to that equation, to that variable. Okay, so as we get into solving equations, that's a significant piece of what we do this year. Here is basically what you do. I'm giving you the blanks here. On page 16, there's a slide that says solving equations, and you're filling in the blanks here. Your goal is to isolate the variable. I believe that's the word you're looking to fill in there in that particular blank. That's always the game, solving an equation, isolate the variable, get it by itself. Step 2, if the variable is on one side all by itself, well then all you have to do is simplify it. That means, think of that as just doing the math. And then if the variable is not by itself, do the opposite math operation to both sides. And we're going to see examples of that later. Okay, but that's just kind of the how-to. And then on the bottom of page 16, we have an important rule to solving equations. Do unto one side as you do unto the other. In other words, if you add something to one side of an equal sign, you have to do it to the other side too. And that's basically how you solve equations. Again, that's something we'll be practicing all year long, but important stuff for you to be familiar with. And let me finish this slide up here, and then we'll wrap it up for this particular video. You're asked to solve this equation, x plus 24 equals 49. So if I was going to solve this using what I just showed you, since x is adding 24, I'm going to subtract 24 there, and I'm going to subtract 24 there. Now notice how I'm writing things on both sides of the equal sign, and I just, in this case, it's plus 24, so I'm subtracting 24 from right here. So that became 0, leaving just x on this side here. So what I have to do over here is also subtract 24. So 9 minus 4 is 5. 4 minus 2 is 2. So x equals 25. Okay, and then one more example. 6 times x is 54. So since x is being multiplied, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 6 from both sides. Divide 6 from both sides, because that's what it's doing to the variable over there. So when I do that, those 6's cancel out, and you just have an x right there. That 54 divided by 6 gives me 9. So again, you've isolated the variable in both of these examples here and here to solve it. That's just an example of solving equations, and we get more into this later in the year, but you will see a little bit of that introduced into Chapter 1. So let's wrap that up now for part 3, and then we'll come back with applications and order of operations, and hopefully we'll be able to get it wrapped up from there. So talk to you soon.